If you have a smart president, you will never lose the standard. If you have a stupid president like the last one, you would lose the standard. And if we lost the world standard dollar, that would be like losing a war, a major world war. We would not be the same country any longer.
The cranes continued their relentless motion even as U.S. tariffs surged to a staggering 145%. Despite exports to America plummeting by more than $25 billion in the first half of 2025, China's factories kept their pace, not slowing down but speeding up. By mid-year, China's net exports were on the rise, not falling. In fact, they contributed 1.7 percentage points to China's GDP growth, as reported by official data. Headlines screamed about an economic war, but inside the assembly lines, production surged. This paradox raised a singular question. If China is losing its largest customer, why is it still? The cranes in China kept moving without a hitch, even as U.S. tariffs surged to a staggering 145%. Exports to America dropped dramatically, plummeting by over $25 billion in the first half of 2025. Yet Chinese factories showed no signs of slowing down. In fact, they ramped up their production. By mid-year, China's net exports had increased, not decreased, contributing 1.7 percentage points to GDP growth, according to official statistics. The headlines cried out about an economic war, but within the assembly lines, production levels were surging. This apparent contradiction raised one important question. If China is losing its largest customer, why is it still thriving? For years, U.S. policymakers operated under the assumption that China could not survive without the American market. They believed severing this link would force Beijing to either negotiate or face a collapse. But the data tells a different story. In 2023, nearly 14.6% of China's exports were destined for the U.S. By the first half of 2025, this figure had fallen to just 11.9%, marking a nearly 20% drop. Despite this, total exports from China increased by 5.9% year over year, according to Chinese customs data. The U.S. had become optional for China, not irreplaceable. But here's where it gets more interesting. While Washington escalated its trade crackdown, Beijing completely reworked the structure of its economy. China's growth used to depend heavily on sales to America, but now it's expanding by replacing America with new markets. This shift is happening on two fronts, internally and globally. Domestically, China has implemented the dual circulation strategy, a policy designed to stimulate internal demand. In 2024, household consumption contributed over 50% of GDP growth, according to China's National Bureau of Statistics. By 2025, that figure had reached 45%, nearly double the contribution from exports. Globally, China is aggressively expanding into the global South, Africa, Latin America, Southeast Asia, markets that are less susceptible to U.S. pressure and increasingly hungry for Chinese infrastructure, technology, and financing. Yet this shift isn't as neat and clean as it might appear. The decoupling from the U.S. is messy and incomplete. On the one hand, Chinese consumers are purchasing more local goods than ever before. Chinese-made vehicles from BYD, smartphones from Huawei, and even luxury brands are seeing greater domestic sales. On the other hand, the Chinese public is saving more than it spends. Household consumption as a percentage of GDP remains among the lowest in the world, far below the 60 to 70% range seen in the US and Europe. Why? It's mainly due to the country's fragile social safety net. Just 0.8% of China's GDP is allocated to unemployment insurance, pensions, and social welfare, one of the lowest in the world according to OECD data. Saving is not a choice for many, it's a matter of survival. Additionally, China's real estate market, once a major driver of middle-class wealth, is now a source of anxiety. Housing prices fell by 4.5% in 2024. With an aging population and rising dependency ratios, the road to a consumption-driven economy is not just an economic challenge, it's also psychological. However, despite these challenges, Beijing is not slowing down. Industrial production surged by 6.4% year over year in the first half of 2025, and manufacturing output increased by 7%. Infrastructure investment continues at a strong pace. particularly in high-tech sectors like clean energy and logistics. Despite the wear and tear, China's economic engine keeps running, and this contradiction isn't a flaw. It's part of the strategy. Now let's look beyond China's borders. While China is transforming internally, it is also reshaping global trade. The Belt and Road Initiative, launched in 2013, has seen over $1 trillion invested in infrastructure projects across 140-plus countries. From ports in Pakistan to power plants in Laos, China is building a vast web of economic influence. In 2024, Asia became China's largest export destination, surpassing the U.S. for the first time. China exported over $500 billion in goods to countries like Brazil, South Africa, and Indonesia, turning them into top trade partners. This shift is significant because it creates insulation from U.S. tariffs. In the first half of 2025, while exports to the U.S. fell by $25.9 billion, exports to other regions grew by $11.5 billion. That's a 4-to-1 offset. Tariff impacts from Washington are being mitigated by increasing demand from places like Lagos, Jakarta, and São Paulo. But here's the twist. Much of this resilience is based on lessons learned from the U.S. itself. While the U.S. pioneered globalization, it's now retreating. China, which was excluded from shaping the original rules, is now building its own global system. If you found this video insightful, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Stay tuned for more updates and content. We've got plenty more coming your way.